We put more time in special teams over the last 3 or 4 years than we did in my first 15 years, I would say. I've learned quite a bit about special teams. That part of the game gave me something to do to help study and compare notes with our special teams guys and put a plan together. It's an interesting part of the game, the standpoint of when you mention being aggressive or not being aggressive. It's almost like it's very similar to what it was like on offense. You have to be aggressive enough to give yourself a chance, but the first time you go after a punt and you rough the punter, give them the ball back, then you give them a chance to win and basically what I would call an unforced error. So it's very similar to game planning on offense for me, in that there's a considerable amount of information and concepts and schemes in special teams. I was unaware of that until I started paying attention to it, but it is intriguing and it is a fun aspect of the game.
Like back when you're scoring 50 points a game,
Mm-hmm.
does that make you think, let's not go returning punts. Let's just fair catch it and let the offense back on the field. That kind of thing.
Well, 100%. If you're good enough to where if you just want to get the ball back, then you're going to be very vanilla on special teams. If you feel like you need to try to steal a touchdown, like Coach Snyder used to do at Kansas State, was going to try to beat you in penalty yards and then steal a touchdown in special teams, then obviously I would think you would want to be a little more in-depth in your concepts, which obviously you have a lot more time in practice.
And so last year, you specifically, but a lot of people, defenses sort of rose up. Does that make you think maybe we need to see if we can break a 20-yard return or something?
We were more aggressive the last couple years on special teams than we have been in the past. A couple years ago, we tried to block a lot of punts. We didn't feel like we really had a threat to return one, so we said we might as well try to block one. Our return game has gotten better over the last couple years, so we haven't tried to block as many punts and just try to set up returns. Fortunately, we've been pretty good on covering punts and kicks because, one, we use the Australian punt and it hangs in the air forever, so we don't get a lot of returns against us, which is what I like. And then on our kickoffs, we've gotten good hang time, and we haven't really had to defend a lot of kickoffs, returns, I should say, because most of the time we're inside the 30-yard line. 6 of our 10 guys who are covering, the other guy is the safety. I thought somebody would say you didn't even know we played with 11, but 6 of the 10 guys that are in a real coverage mode, they're inside the 30 most of the time, so we were pretty fortunate in that area.
Along the lines of that, I was late because I was over there in the indoor. The specialists are grinding. They said they're all about the grind, so they're all practicing.
Sure.
One thing I've noticed about specialists that is so unique is when one of them's off, when one of them's having problems, snapper, punter, kicker, the other will try and correct them. The other will try and help them. I mean, even though they're competing, it's almost like they're all for one, one for all.
Well, they coach themselves for the most part. There's, I don't know how many special teams coaches, which would be a punting coach or a kicking coach, that understands the concepts and the technique and the fundamentals, that is a full-time staff member that coaches those guys. So most of these specialists have their own coaches, and they send video, and they coach them on video, and then when they're working together, they live in their own world anyway. And I've said this for years, those guys are really dedicated. They go and practice and work on all the drill work on their own to improve their game. And what you said is true, they're coaching each other. And so that's why it's important that when we do recruit specialists, that they're disciplined enough and mature enough to be able to essentially get their work done without coaches being there watching them.
When you brought in MK to be kind of oversee special teams, was that something you had seen done before in terms of having that guy in an analyst role as opposed to an on-field coach or a GA?
Well, now, I think he was my fourth one. I moved special teams to GAs. Robbie Disher was my first one. I don't know what year that was, long time ago. So I took a full-time coach out of the special teams role years ago, may have been like 2011 or something, and then had graduate assistants. And then a few years ago, I moved an analyst into that role that can work off the field and then distribute it to the 4 full-time coaches on our staff, and they run each of the core units.
Right, but as far as having it be a guy that can't do any on-field coaching, like, I mean, a grad assistant.
What about it?
I was just curious if that was something that you came up with on your own, or if you saw that somewhere. It seems to be a growing trend a little bit.
I think, you guys can check this, I think I was the first coach to hire an analyst at any position. Somebody needs to check that, but when I hired Bill Clay, I think that I was the first coach that hired an analyst in the country. And I followed up a few years later with special teams analyst. Maybe somebody was ahead of me, I don't know, but I didn't know about it.
What do you think kind of led you to make that decision? What do you think has been the benefit of having analysts like that on staff?
Well, those guys can do, so it would be like somebody doing all the legwork that you do. When I see you over here at the high school games and doing that and taking pictures and writing notes and getting stories and talking to the players, and then go back and write your story or whatever, you wouldn't have to do any of that. All you have to do is write your story.
Sign me up.
Right. I mean, just all the airplanes that y'all been in and stuff and all that. Essentially, that's what an analyst does, is they present a package each week to the offensive staff, the defensive staff, and the special team staff, and then they present one to me, and they do all of the legwork except the final, put it together, and then go coach it.
Has Saban thanked you yet?
Has Saban thanked me? Yeah, see, I need to ask him. I'm going there Friday, and I need to ask him that when I'm there. Because if I was the first, he obviously took it and ran with it. So,
What are you going to see him for?
I'm speaking at their clinic.
What are you gonna talk about?
I don't know. Everybody wants PowerPoints and all that, and most of the time my PowerPoints are on a napkin, scribbled in pen. So I'm not sure. I need to look at the paperwork they sent me. I'll bet you it has. They're probably wanting me to talk about no huddle offense, would be my guess.
Are you speaking to other coaches? Is it kind of a clinic or?
Yeah, it's their clinic that they have. We have ours, I think, the next week.
For more information, you can visit tulsaworld.com.